So as I identified earlier, I'm going to mess with you a little bit, not to mess with you, but to make sure we get to this information. It's really important for the rest of the semester. Yes, the central nervous system is important, yes. Yes, the sensory nervous system is important, yes. But since we're going to be affecting everything else for the rest of the semester, we've got to understand how our peripheral nerves are built. But an introduction into them, a little bit in lab last week, and we'll continue our peripheral nervous system in lab this week about how they work. But we're going to focus in this chapter the efferent nervous system. So we'll go through and review our objectives. We're going to look at the anatomy of each, the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. We're going to review the neurotransmitters, which we became introduced to in Chapter 8, released by the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. We're going to utilize this term dual innervation and also reciprocal innervation. So we're looking at mostly anatomy and the neurotransmitters in this chapter. To give you the reminder, Chapter 7, we outlaid the nervous system. We said central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Chapter 10, sensory information. Chapter 9, how does our brain and spinal cord deal with this? And here we are in Chapter 11, the efferent nervous system. So we learned, introduced, that our efferent control over our effectors is divided into the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. What word did we use for somatic? Voluntary control over our skeletal. You're right, soma does transition to the body. It gives us voluntary control over our skeletal muscles. And the autonomic nervous system is the involuntary nervous system. So are you with me on where we're going to study? The nerves that control our effector organs. Because giving an even further back reminder, receptor, what? We have a receptor, we have a control center, and an effector. In order to tell the effector what to do, we have special nerves called efferent nerves, which are coordinated by, who said that? Interneurons. So we're going to look at the efferent nerves that control our, those are called?
Effector organs.
Effector organs. Very good. Okay, so far? Looking at how we control effector organs at each, the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. That little review is summarized in an image which was kind of familiar to what we saw in lab last week, except where detail was kind of chopped off of our spinal nerves. So this is just an alternative image to what I just showed a moment ago. Our central nervous system, our brain, or in this case the spinal cord, receives sensory information, conveys it by what type of nerves shown in the blue? Afferent. Interneurons, control center, not usually shown here. So we communicate with efferent nerves to control the effector organs like skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, glands, everything. So we're going to look here, and for the spinal cord, which side of the spinal cord are we on? Ventral. Is that clock off or is it? Yeah.
It's way off.
Wow. All right. Okay. So the efferent nervous system. We can see a simple drawing here, but we're going to see it's not always just like this, right? So we're going to look at those efferent nerves. So if you remember, the efferent nervous system is subdivided into the autonomic versus somatic nervous system. They're autonomic, not automatic. Yes, they do control effector organs, but that's about as where the similarity ends. The nerve cell that controls them is built differently. The effector organ is different. The neurotransmitters released are variable. And there we know that the target cell response is really different. The receptor is different, the neurotransmitters are different. But they do each control some effector organ. So giving it efferent control that way. A term that I want to address about the autonomic nervous system is that the autonomic nervous system controls, what does the autonomic nervous system control actually?
Internal organs.
Our internal organs. Things that we cannot voluntarily control. So we said it's involuntary. And so I'm going to utilize this term called dual innervation. On your notes, I'm going to circle this word right there. This term, dual innervation. Dual innervation. Our internal organs are dually innervated by both subdivisions of our autonomic nervous systems. It means that our internal organs are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Yet, the effects on the organs by each subdivision are very much what? Different. Opposite. Because the sympathetic nervous system is activated, we said, when we're in the fight or flight response. And the parasympathetic is activated when you're not fighting and flighting, when you're resting and digesting. So, our internal organs are dually innervated by both subdivisions of the autonomic nervous system. That means we can control our internal organs when we are under fight or flight stress, or we can control the same organs when we're at rest. But their effects are what we said. Generally opposite, different from one another. So if I use the word dual innervation, if an organ is my heart is dually innervated, what's that? That's a concise way to say what? It's controlled two ways. It's controlled by the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system probably does what to my heart? Beats it up. Parasympathetic slows it down. Opposed. Oppose one another. But the organs are dually innervated. So we can control them whether we're excited and stressed or not. Feeding and whatever they say. I'll come back with some scenarios and just some examples, if not today, on Thursday. If we look at the anatomy of the autonomic nervous system, turn to page 2 of these guided notes. We've got our central nervous system again and our peripheral nervous system. What you should notice is that the efferent nerve that extends out towards the effector is not just one nerve. You can see there's like two nerves in a row. And we also have a collection of cell bodies. If you're in a lab, what work out here? If there's the axonal terminals and cell bodies grouped together.
They're bundled.
A ganglion. Oh. They would be bundled, yes. And the technical name would be a ganglion. We could also use our other terminology, and post. We could say presynaptic, we could say postsynaptic, but here I have a ganglion, so I would say pre-ganglion and post-ganglion. In your autonomic nervous system, there are two cells in a row. There's a ganglion along the way. And there's the first cell that extends out from the central nervous system is called the preganglion cell. And the purple one here is called the postganglion cell. So in the autonomic nervous system, it's not just one cell, but it's how many before we get to the effector? Two nerve cells in a chain before we ever get to the effector organs. The effector organs of your autonomic nervous system are what? Include what? What are some examples? What?
Cardiac.
Cardiac, smooth muscle, glands. There's a nice short way to list it. The heart, smooth muscle, glands. And can be controlled autonomically, or you could say involuntarily. Now, we can add some detail tying into Chapter 8 material. The preganglion cell always, always, always releases acetylcholine. So add in here, the preganglion cell releases acetylcholine. My abbreviation here, neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitter of the preganglion cell is always acetylcholine. Postsynaptic cell needs a postganglion cell needs a receptor. What kind? Some cholinergic receptor. Some cholinergic. Yes. Some cholinergic receptor. And if this thing gets excited, this thing probably ought to. So which receptor should I put here if I want to make sure the post cell is excited? Good job. So the postganglion cell expresses nicotinic receptors at the synapse. It'll depolarize, it'll generate an action potential, and it'll release neurotransmitters on our various effector organs. The postganglion neurotransmitter depends. Is it a sympathetic nerve, or is it a parasympathetic nerve? Well, it just depends. Okay, so it may yes, this is a sympathetic nerve. Do I? Yes, and I don't know if it. Good job, you read ahead. Looking at the length of the pre and the postganglion does depend if it's a sympathetic or parasympathetic, which will also dictate whether or not it releases a sympathetic neurotransmitter or a parasympathetic neurotransmitter. So I want you to acknowledge that depending on the cell type, it may release acetylcholine, it may release epinephrine, if it's the adrenomedulla, or it may release norepinephrine. So it depends. This part, it's not going to release all three. It's going to release one of these. Maybe you want to clarify. One of these neurotransmitters could be released to affect the various organs in our body that would have some adrenergic or cholinergic receptors. And so therefore, identify the receptors are variable as well. The acetylcholine releases the postganglion cell. The target better have a cholinergic receptor. Norepinephrine release, the target cell better have some adrenergic receptor. I'm going to go ahead and conclude our class here. On Thursday, we will continue Chapter 11, and I may talk a little bit about sensory physiology. So go ahead and review at least the summary of Chapter 10. Review the summary of Chapter 10. See you guys in lab or class.